The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep rumble that echoed through the enormous hall. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stepped inside, her black boots clicking against the polished crystal floor that stretched out before her like a frozen ocean. Above her head, the dome-shaped ceiling showed the swirling colors of the Nexus Prime Nebula, casting strange purple and blue lights across the gathered alien representatives. Elena had been to these meetings many times before, but today felt different. The air itself seemed thick with worry and fear. She could see it in the way the Zephyrian delegates kept their crystal bodies dimmed instead of their usual bright glow. The tentacled Ophidians were coiled tighter than normal, their skin showing patches of dark red that meant stress. Even the proud bird-like kestrels had their feathers pressed flat against their bodies. At the center of the vast chamber sat the High Council table, a circular structure made from the same crystal as the floor. Around it, representatives from 43 different worlds and species waited for her arrival. Elena recognized most of them by now. There was Elder Zalthara, the ancient Praetorian whose gray skin looked like old stone. Beside him sat Speaker Veltar of the Trade Federation, her blue tentacles moving in slow, nervous patterns. The Kestrel War Chief Hawkwind perched on his special tall chair, his golden eyes fixed on Elena with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Elena took her assigned seat at the table. The chair was designed for humans, one of the few accommodations the Council had made since Earth joined 3 years ago. Before that, humanity had been nothing more than a curiosity to these ancient civilizations, a young species that had barely figured out how to travel between stars, let alone build anything that could threaten the established order of the galaxy. Ambassador Vasquez, Elder Zalthara's voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. Thank you for responding to our emergency summons so quickly. Elena nodded politely. Of course, Elder. Earth stands ready to assist the Council in any way we can. A few of the alien representatives made sounds that might have been laughter. Though it was hard to tell with some species, Elena had grown used to their attitude over the past 3 years. To them, humanity was like a child offering to help adults with their problems. Well-meaning perhaps, but ultimately not very useful. Speaker Veltar leaned forward, her tentacles creating complex patterns in the air as she spoke. The situation has become critical, Ambassador. The hegemony forces have broken through our outer defenses. They have already destroyed 3 trade worlds and are moving toward the core systems. Elena felt her stomach tighten. The hegemony was an alliance of 6 warlike species that had been threatening the peaceful trade routes for months. Their technology was advanced, their ships were powerful, and they seemed to enjoy causing destruction for its own sake. The Galactic Council had tried diplomacy, economic sanctions, and even limited military action. Nothing had worked. How bad is it? Elena asked. War Chief Hawkwind spread his wings slightly, a gesture that meant great concern among his people. We have lost over 60 ships in the past week alone. Their new dreadnoughts are equipped with quantum weapons that can tear through our shields like they are made of paper. Our combined fleets are simply no match for their technology. Elder. Zalthara activated a holographic display above the table. The 3-dimensional map showed the galaxy with red markers indicating hegemony positions and blue markers showing Council forces. The red was spreading like a disease, consuming blue territories at an alarming rate. The Kepler colony was evacuated. Yesterday, he continued. The Harmony Station is expected to fall within the next 48 hours. At this rate, they will reach the core worlds within a month. Elena studied the display carefully. She had seen similar maps in her briefings back on Earth, but those maps showed additional information that these aliens had no idea existed. Information about ships and fleets that officially did not exist. What does the Council propose to do? She asked. Speaker Veltar's tentacles drooped slightly. We have exhausted our military options. Our combined fleets cannot match their firepower. We have tried to negotiate, but they respond only with demands for complete surrender. Which brings us to why we have called you here, Elder Zalthara said. The Council has voted to formally request military assistance from all member worlds. We know that Earth's contribution will be modest, given your technological limitations, but every ship counts in our current situation. Elena almost smiled at the phrase, technological limitations. If only they knew. But maintaining the illusion had been crucial to humanity's survival strategy. Let the galaxy think humans were primitive and harmless while they built something that would change everything. What kind of assistance are you looking for? Elena asked, keeping her voice neutral. War Chief Hawkwind ruffled his feathers. Whatever you can spare, Ambassador. A few frigates, perhaps some support vessels. We understand that Earth's shipyards are not capable of producing the kind of heavy warships needed for this conflict, but we would welcome any contribution to our cause. Around the table, other representatives nodded in agreement. They all had the same expression that Elena had come to know well over the past 3 years. The look of adults humoring a child. They were asking for humanity's help because protocol demanded it, not because they expected anything useful. I will need to consult with my government, Elena said. This is a significant decision that requires approval from Earth's leadership. Of course, Elder Zalthara replied. How long do you think this consultation will take? Elena pretended to consider the question. In reality, she already knew what the answer would be. The plans had been in place for years, waiting for exactly this moment. I should have an answer for you within 72 hours. Excellent, Speaker Veltar said. In the meantime, we will continue our defensive preparations, though I fear 72 hours may be all the time we have left. The meeting continued for another hour, with various representatives discussing evacuation plans, defensive strategies, and diplomatic alternatives. Elena listened carefully, taking notes and asking the appropriate questions. But her mind was already focused on the secure communication she would send to Earth as soon as this meeting ended. As the session concluded, Elena noticed something interesting. While most of the representatives seemed resigned to defeat, a few were watching her with curious expressions. Elder Zalthara in particular kept glancing in her direction, as if trying to read something in her face. Ambassador, he said as the others began to file out of the chamber. May I speak with you privately for a moment? Elena nodded and waited as the chamber emptied. When they were alone, the ancient Praetorian moved closer to her chair. His gray skin seemed to shimmer slightly in the strange light from the nebula above. I have been alive for over 400 years, he said quietly. I have seen many species rise and fall in that time. I have learned to read the signs when a civilization is hiding something important. Elena kept her expression neutral. I'm not sure what you mean, Elder. Your species has been remarkably quiet during your 3 years in the Council, he continued. You ask many questions but share very little information. Your trade representatives are knowledgeable about technologies that Earth supposedly does not possess. Your diplomats seem unusually confident for representatives of a primitive world. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Had humanity's deception been discovered? Elder, I assure you that Earth has been completely honest in all our dealings with the Council. Zalthara was quiet for a long moment, his ancient eyes studying her face. Perhaps, he said finally. But I have a feeling that the next 72 hours will reveal many truths that have been hidden until now. He turned and walked away, leaving Elena alone in the vast chamber. She sat there for several minutes, thinking about his words. Had they been too obvious? Had someone figured out what humanity was really capable of? She pushed the worry aside. It didn't matter now. The time for hiding was almost over. Elena activated her personal communicator and sent a coded message to Earth. 3 simple words that would set in motion events that would change the galaxy forever. The time comes. Within hours, her message would reach the hidden command centers. Scattered throughout human space, Admiral Marcus Chen would receive his orders at the secret base in the asteroid belt. Captain Sarah Williams would power up her ship's systems at the facility hidden behind Jupiter's moons. Across dozens of star systems, men and women who had spent years preparing for this moment would finally get their chance to show the galaxy what humanity was really capable of. Elena stood up and walked toward the chamber's exit. Behind her, the holographic display still showed the spreading red markers of the hegemony advance. Soon, that map would need to be updated with colors that didn't officially exist yet. As she reached the doors, Elena allowed herself a small smile. The Galactic Council wanted humanity's help. They were about to get far more than they had bargained for. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the command station known as Ghost Base. Through the massive viewing window, he could see the final preparations taking place across the hidden fleet. That had been his life's work for the past 15 years. The Ghost Fleet stretched out before him like a sleeping giant finally awakening. 200 ships of various sizes floated in the carefully carved-out space between 3 large asteroids. To any outside observer, this region of space appeared empty, except for the usual rocks and debris. The advanced stealth technology that surrounded the entire base made it invisible to every known form of detection in the galaxy. Marcus had been a young captain when the Ghost Fleet project began. Back then, humanity had just made contact with the Galactic Council, and Earth's leaders quickly realized that their new alien neighbors viewed them as primitive and harmless. Instead of being offended by this attitude, Earth's government had seen an opportunity. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Commander Jessica Park from her station, "all ships are reporting ready status. The final weapon systems checks have been completed." Marcus nodded, his eyes still fixed on the fleet before him. Each ship in the Ghost Fleet represented a revolution in spacecraft design. While the other species in the galaxy built their vessels to be tough and heavily armored, humans had taken a completely different approach. Their ships were designed to be adaptable. The lead ship, the UES Phantom, demonstrated this principle perfectly. Right now, it looked like a sleek arrow, built for speed and long-range combat. But Marcus knew that with a few minutes and the right commands, the Phantom could reconfigure itself into a close combat brawler with heavy armor and short-range weapons. The ship's structure was built from programmable matter that could reshape itself based on tactical needs. "Communications from Earth, sir," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim. "Ambassador Vasquez has sent the activation codes." Marcus felt his heart rate increase slightly. After all these years of preparation, the moment had finally arrived. "Patch me through to all fleet commanders." The main screen lit up with dozens of faces representing the captains and admirals who would lead humanity's secret fleets into battle. Marcus recognized most of them. Captain Williams from the Storm Fleet hidden behind Jupiter's moons. Admiral Rodriguez from the Titan Fleet concealed in the Kuiper Belt. Commander Zhang from the Phantom Fleet stationed near Pluto. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, "you all know why we're here. The Galactic Council has formally requested our assistance against the hegemony. After 3 years of letting them think we're harmless, it's time to show them what humanity is really capable of." He paused, looking at each face on the screen. These were some of the best military minds Earth had ever produced, and they had all spent years preparing for this moment. "The alien species of this galaxy fight wars the way they've always fought them," Marcus continued. "Big ships, heavy armor, predictable tactics. They think warfare is about who has the biggest gun or the strongest shield. They're about to learn that humans fight differently." Admiral Rodriguez leaned forward on her screen. "What are our initial targets, Marcus?" Marcus activated the tactical display, showing the current positions of hegemony forces. "The enemy has spread their fleets thin, trying to cover as much territory as possible. They're confident that nothing in the galaxy can challenge their dreadnoughts. That confidence is about to become their weakness." The plan was elegantly simple. While the Galactic Council's forces had been fighting the hegemony head-on, trying To match their firepower, humanity would use speed, stealth, and unpredictability. The Ghost Fleet would hit supply lines and communication centers. The Storm Fleet would use their weather manipulation technology to create chaos in enemy formations. The Phantom Fleet would strike at command ships and disappear before the enemy could respond. "Remember," Marcus said, "our advantage is surprise. They don't know we exist, which means they can't prepare for our tactics. But once we reveal ourselves, that advantage is gone forever. Make every shot count." Captain Williams spoke up from her position with the Storm Fleet. "What about the Council forces? Do they know we're coming?" "Negative," Marcus replied. "Ambassador, Vasquez has been instructed to maintain radio silence until we make contact with enemy forces. The fewer people who know about us before we strike, the better." Around the hidden bases scattered throughout human space, similar conversations were taking place. Each fleet had spent years developing their own specialized technologies and tactics. The Storm Fleet had figured out how to weaponize weather patterns, creating electromagnetic storms that could disable enemy ships. The Phantom Fleet had mastered dimensional phase technology that allowed them to exist slightly outside normal space, making them nearly impossible to target. But perhaps the most impressive was the Titan Fleet. Hidden in the outer reaches of the solar system, these ships were built on a scale that would shock the galaxy. The largest vessel, the UES Colossus, was the size of a small moon and carried enough firepower to destroy an entire enemy fleet by itself. It had taken 10 years, and the resources of an entire asteroid mining operation to build, but the result was a ship unlike anything else in the galaxy. "Fleet status report," Marcus ordered. The responses came quickly from each commander. All fleets were at full readiness. Crews had been at battle stations for the past 6 hours, waiting for the final order. Weapons were charged, stealth systems were active, and navigation computers had already plotted courses to their initial targets. "Sir," Lieutenant Park called out, "we're receiving priority communications from the outer monitoring stations. Hegemony forces have just engaged Council ships near the Kepler system." Marcus felt a cold anger settle in his chest. The Kepler colony had been one of the first alien settlements that humanity had visited as part of their cultural exchange program. The colonists there were peaceful traders who had welcomed human visitors with genuine warmth. Now those same colonists were being slaughtered by the hegemony's war machine. "All fleets," Marcus announced. "This is Admiral Chen, with Operation Revelation Authorization Code Alpha 77. You are cleared to engage enemy forces. Show them what happens when they threaten our friends." Across the solar system, massive engines began to power up. Ships that had been hidden for years started moving toward jump points that would take them to distant battlefields. The Ghost Fleet's stealth generators hummed to life, making the ships fade from view even to human sensors. Marcus watched as his flagship, the UES Spectre, prepared for its first combat mission. The ship's adaptive hull was already beginning to shift, preparing for the configuration that would be most effective against hegemony dreadnoughts. Weapon systems that had never been fired in anger were coming online, their targeting computers, loaded with data about enemy ship designs that the aliens thought were secret. "Navigation," Marcus called. "Set course for the Kepler system. Maximum speed." "Aye, sir. Jump drive ready." "Engineering, status on the adaptive systems?" "All green, Admiral. We can reconfigure to any combat mode in under 4 minutes." Marcus took a deep breath and settled into his command chair. Around him, his bridge crew worked with the smooth efficiency that came from years of training and preparation. They were about to become the first humans to engage alien warships in combat, and they were ready. "All ships," he announced to the fleet, "jump on my mark. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth today. We're fighting for every peaceful species in this galaxy that the hegemony wants to destroy." He paused, thinking about Ambassador Vasquez sitting in that council chamber, surrounded by aliens who thought humanity was weak and primitive. In a few hours, she would get to deliver some very surprising news. "Execute jump," Marcus ordered. The stars around Ghost Base stretched into lines of light as the first wave of humanity's secret fleet entered hyperspace. Behind them, similar scenes were playing out at bases throughout the solar system as hundreds of ships began moving toward their targets. The hegemony had spent months preparing for war against the known fleets of the Galactic Council. They had no idea that they were about to face something completely new, something that would change their understanding of what humanity was capable of. In the depths of space, the ghost of human ingenuity was about to become very real indeed. Captain Vex's Tar of the hegemony flagship Bone Crusher stood at the center of his command bridge, watching with satisfaction as his fleet systematically destroyed the Kepler colony's orbital defenses. The massive dreadnought shook slightly as its main guns fired another salvo, turning a Council defense platform into expanding clouds of metal and plasma. Around him, his bridge crew worked with the cold efficiency that had made the hegemony the most feared military force in the galaxy. Their six-species alliance had perfected the art of warfare over centuries, combining the best technologies and tactics from each member race. The result was a war machine that seemed unstoppable. "Target the civilian evacuation ships," Vextar ordered, his scarred face showing no emotion. "The Council needs to understand that there is no escape from hegemony justice." His weapons officer, a hulking member of the Crex warrior race, grinned with anticipation. "With pleasure, Captain. Quantum torpedoes locked and ready." But before the order could be executed, something strange appeared on the tactical display. Lieutenant Zara, the ship's sensor operator, frowned at her readings. "Captain, I'm detecting spatial anomalies throughout the system." Vextar turned toward her station. "What kind of anomalies?" "Unknown, sir. The sensors are picking up gravitational distortions, but there's nothing visible causing them. It's almost like space itself is bending." Vextar had seen many strange phenomena during his years of conquest, but this was new. "Could it be some kind of Council weapon?" "Negative, sir. The Council ships are maintaining their current positions. Whatever this is, it's not coming from them." Around the bridge, other crew members began reporting similar readings. The space around the Kepler system was behaving in ways that defied their understanding of physics. Energy readings spiked in empty areas of space, then disappeared without explanation. "Captain," called the communications officer, "we're receiving reports from other ships in the fleet. They're all detecting the same anomalies." Vextar felt a cold uneasiness in his stomach. In over 200 battles, he had never encountered anything like this. All ships maintain formation and continue the attack. Whatever this is, it won't stop us from completing our mission. That's when space itself seemed to tear open. The first human ship appeared like a ghost, materializing from another dimension. One moment there was empty space, the next moment a sleek vessel unlike anything in hegemony databases was floating just 3 kilometers from the Bone Crusher's port side. Before anyone could react, the mysterious ship opened fire, but these weren't the energy weapons or quantum torpedoes that hegemony forces were designed to defend against. Instead, streams of what looked like liquid metal shot out from the human ship, striking the Bone Crusher's shields. Instead of being deflected, the strange projectiles seemed to exist in multiple time streams simultaneously, hitting their target moments before they were actually fired. The hegemony ship's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and physical projectiles, had no idea how to handle weapons that violated the basic laws of cause and effect. The temporal kinetic rounds passed through the defensive barriers like they weren't there, striking the hull with devastating force. "Shield status," Vextar shouted over the alarm klaxons that had begun wailing throughout the ship. "Shields are holding, but they're not stopping whatever those weapons are," his shield technician replied. "The projectiles are phasing through our defensive matrix." More human ships were appearing throughout the system, materializing from the strange spatial distortions that the sensors had detected. Each one was different from the others, as if they had been designed for completely different purposes. Some were long and thin like arrows. Others were compact and heavily armed, and a few seemed to be constantly changing shape as Vextar watched. "Sir," Lieutenant Zara called out, "I'm counting over 50 enemy vessels, but their energy signatures keep shifting. It's like they're rebuilding themselves while they fight." That's exactly what they were doing. The UES Phantom, Admiral Chen's flagship, was demonstrating the adaptive technology that made human ships so dangerous. As it engaged a hegemony destroyer, its hull flowed like liquid metal, reconfiguring from a long-range artillery platform into a close combat fighter in less than 3 minutes. The destroyer's captain, used to fighting enemies that maintained consistent ship configurations, found himself trying to target a vessel that was completely different from what it had been moments before. His weapons were calibrated for the ship's previous form, and by the time he could adjust, the Phantom had transformed again. But the technology was only part of what made the human attack so devastating. The real shock was the tactics. Hegemony. Forces were used to fighting enemies who followed predictable patterns. Energy weapons followed straight lines. Ships maintained formation. Battles happened in 3 dimensions according to established principles of space combat. The humans seemed to ignore all of these rules. Captain Williams's ship from the Storm Fleet, the UES Tempest, had begun generating what appeared to be weather patterns in the vacuum of space. Electromagnetic storms crackled between the hegemony ships, disrupting their communications and sensor systems. Lightning that shouldn't exist in space arced between vessels, overloading electronics and causing system failures throughout the enemy fleet. "How are they creating storms in vacuum?" Vextar demanded. His science officer, a brilliant member of the Nexari tech race, was frantically working at his station. "Unknown, Captain. They appear to be manipulating quantum fields to create localized atmospheric effects. The technology required for this is beyond anything in our databases." Another group of human ships was demonstrating an even more disturbing ability. The vessels from the Phantom Fleet seemed to exist partially outside normal space, flickering in and out of visible reality. They would appear just long enough to fire a devastating salvo, then vanish before return fire could reach them. Commander Zhang's ship, the UES Wraith, had perfected this dimensional phase technology. Her vessel existed in what human scientists called phase space, a dimension slightly removed from normal reality. From this position, she could observe and target enemy ships while remaining essentially untouchable. "Target the command ship," Zhang ordered her weapons officer. "Full spread of phase torpedoes." The torpedoes were launched from phase space, but materialized in normal reality just as they struck their target. The hegemony's shields and armor were designed to stop attacks coming from normal space, not from weapons that emerged from another dimension entirely. Throughout the system, similar scenes were playing out as human fleets demonstrated technologies and tactics that the hegemony had never encountered. The Storm Fleet continued to generate impossible weather patterns that disrupted enemy formations. The Ghost Fleet's ships kept changing their configurations, making it impossible for enemy gunners to maintain target locks. The Phantom Fleet struck from dimensional space, appearing and disappearing like vengeful spirits. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the psychological warfare. As human ships engaged the enemy, they broadcast messages on all frequencies. Not threats or demands for surrender, but detailed reports of each hegemony defeat. Ship names, casualty figures, tactical failures, all broadcast in the clear for anyone to intercept. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "the humans are transmitting our battle casualties to the entire galaxy. Every military frequency, every news network, every diplomatic channel. They want everyone to know that we're losing." Vexatar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest. Fear. Not just fear of defeat, but fear of the unknown. These human ships fought like nothing he had ever encountered. Their technology seemed to ignore basic physical laws. Their tactics were unpredictable and terrifying. "All ships," he ordered, "retreat to Rally Point 7. We need to regroup and analyze what we're facing. But as the hegemony fleet began to withdraw, they discovered that the humans had anticipated this move as well. Ships from the Titan fleet, massive vessels that had been waiting at the edge of the system, moved to block their escape routes. The UES Colossus, a ship the size of a small moon, positioned itself directly in the path of the retreating hegemony forces. The sight of this massive vessel, bristling with weapons that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before, was enough to break the morale of even the toughest hegemony warriors. Ships that had conquered dozens of star systems suddenly found themselves faced with a human vessel that dwarfed their largest dreadnoughts. "Sir," Lieutenant Zara whispered, "that ship, it's larger than some of the space stations we've captured. How did they build something like that without anyone knowing?" Vexitar had no answer. As reports came in from across his fleet, the situation became clear. They weren't just losing this battle. They were being completely outclassed by an enemy that shouldn't even exist. The humans had appeared from nowhere with technology that defied explanation and tactics that turned conventional warfare upside down. In less than 2 hours, they had taken a hegemony fleet that had never known defeat and reduced it to a confused, demoralized group of ships trying to escape. "Send a priority message to High Command," Vexitar ordered. "Tell them we've encountered an unknown enemy force with capabilities far beyond anything in our databases. Request immediate reinforcements and orders." As the Bone Crusher limped away from the Kepler system, Vexitar looked back at the human ships that were now moving to assist the Council evacuation vessels. These mysterious warriors had appeared from nowhere to save people they barely knew, using weapons and tactics that changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. For the first time in his military career, Captain Vexitar of the Hegemony was afraid of what his enemies might do next. The emergency alarm that echoed through the Galactic Council chambers was different from the usual alert signals. This was the sound reserved for galaxy-changing events, a deep, resonating tone that hadn't been heard in over a century. Representatives, who had been in the middle of heated debates about evacuation procedures, suddenly fell silent as the massive holographic display at the center of the chamber activated. Elder Zalthara was the first to understand what they were seeing. The ancient Praetorian had lived through 4 galactic wars and countless smaller conflicts, but the tactical readouts appearing before him made no sense. According to the real-time battle reports from the Kepler system, something impossible was happening. "This must be an error in the data transmission," declared Speaker Veltar, her blue tentacles writhing with agitation. "These readings indicate that the hegemony fleet is retreating." War Chief Hawkwind spread his wings in the gesture his people made when faced with something beyond their understanding. "Not just retreating, Speaker. According to these reports, they're fleeing in complete disorder." Around the chamber, representatives from 43 different worlds stared at the holographic display in stunned silence. The tactical map showed the Kepler system, where just hours before the hegemony had been systematically destroying Council defenses. Now that same system showed something that no one had expected to see. Hegemony ships in full retreat, their formations broken and their communications filled with panic. But more disturbing than the enemy retreat were the new ship signatures appearing on the display. Vessels that weren't in any database, using technologies that the Council's sensors couldn't properly identify, and broadcasting identification codes that belonged to one specific species. "Are we to understand," Elder Zalthara said slowly, "that these new ships are human?" Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat quietly at her position at the High Council table, watching the chaos unfold around her. She had been expecting this moment, but seeing the reactions of the alien representatives was still somewhat satisfying. For 3 years, she had endured their condescending attitudes and their assumptions about humanity's primitive capabilities. "Ambassador Vasquez," War Chief Hawkwind turned toward her with his piercing golden eyes. "Can you explain what we are seeing here?" Elena stood up slowly, her hands clasped behind her back in a gesture of calm confidence. What you're seeing, War Chief, is humanity's response to the Council's request for military assistance. The chamber erupted in noise as dozens of representatives began talking at once. Translator devices struggled to keep up with the mixture of languages, creating a cacophony of confused questions and demands for explanation. Silence! Elder Zalthara's voice boomed through the chamber, and the noise gradually died down. Ambassador, these ship signatures indicate vessels that are far more advanced than anything Earth has previously demonstrated. Our intelligence reports suggest that humanity possesses only basic spacefaring technology. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Your intelligence reports were incorrect, Elder. The holographic display updated with new information from the battle zone. Video feeds from Council ships showed the impossible sight of human vessels reconfiguring themselves in the middle of combat, changing from one ship type to another in minutes. Other ships seemed to appear and disappear like ghosts, striking the enemy and vanishing before return fire could reach them. Representative Cathara of the Crystal Collective spoke in her musical voice. These vessels appear to utilize technologies that violate several known laws of physics: adaptive hull configurations, dimensional phasing, temporal kinetic weapons. Such things are theoretical at best. Theoretical to your species, perhaps, Elena replied. Humanity has been developing these technologies for quite some time. Speaker Veltar's tentacles were now showing the deep red color that indicated extreme agitation. You mean to tell us that while pretending to be a primitive species, humanity has secretly developed the most advanced military technology in the galaxy? We weren't pretending to be primitive, Elena corrected. We simply chose not to reveal our full capabilities. There's a difference. Elder Zalthara leaned forward in his chair, his ancient eyes studying Elena's face. How long has humanity possessed these capabilities? Some of these technologies have been in development since before we made contact with the Council, Elena answered honestly. Others we developed specifically after learning about the various species in the galaxy. The implications of her statement sent a chill through the chamber. If humanity had been developing military technology based on studying other species, what did that say about their intentions? War Chief Hawkwind was the first to voice this concern. Are we to understand that humanity has been studying our military capabilities in order to develop weapons to use against us? Elena's expression remained calm. We studied your capabilities in order to develop weapons to defend ourselves and our allies. The hegemony proved that such weapons were necessary. New tactical data appeared on the display, showing the full scope of the human fleet engagement. The numbers were staggering. Over 300 human vessels had appeared in the Kepler system, representing technologies that the Council's best scientists hadn't even imagined. The Storm Fleet was creating electromagnetic weather patterns in vacuum. The Phantom Fleet was fighting from another dimension. The Titan Fleet included ships larger than most space stations. 300 ships, whispered Representative Mordak of the Iron Brotherhood. How did humanity build 300 advanced warships without anyone knowing? We built more than 300, Elena said quietly. The chamber fell completely silent at her words. Every eye, optical sensor, and perception organ in the room focused on the human ambassador. How many more? Elder Zalthara asked. Elena paused for a moment, considering how much to reveal. The fleets currently engaging the hegemony represent approximately 1/4 of humanity's total military capacity. The silence that followed her statement was deafening. If what she was saying was true, then humanity possessed the largest military fleet in galactic history, a fleet that had been built in complete secrecy while pretending to be primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. Speaker Veltar was the first to find her voice. This changes everything. If humanity possesses such military power, then the balance of the galaxy has been completely altered. The balance was already altered the moment the hegemony declared war on peaceful civilians, Elena replied. We're simply correcting the situation. Representative Sil Nara of the Academic Union raised a trembling appendage. Ambassador, with such military might, humanity could easily conquer every species in the Council. What assurances do we have? That you won't become the next hegemony? Elena had been expecting this question. The same assurances you had 3 years ago when we joined the Council. Our actions, not our capabilities, define who we are. We're using our fleet to defend Council. Worlds, not conquer them. But you lied to us, War Chief Hawkwind said bluntly. For 3 years, you allowed us to believe you were weak and primitive. We allowed you to underestimate us, Elena corrected. There's a difference between lying and simply not volunteering information that wasn't requested. Elder Zalthara activated his personal communication device, calling up files that had been classified at the highest levels of Council security. I've been reviewing our intelligence reports on humanity over the past 3 years. Now that I know what to look for, the signs were there. Unexplained energy readings from your star system. Trade representatives who knew about technologies you supposedly didn't possess. Diplomatic responses that seemed overly confident for a primitive species. You suspected? Elena asked. I had concerns, the ancient Praetorian admitted. But I never imagined the scope of what you were hiding. The holographic display updated again, showing new reports from across the galaxy. Human fleets were appearing in multiple star systems, engaging hegemony forces with the same devastating effectiveness they had shown at Kepler. The enemy's advance had not just been stopped, it was being reversed. Representative Korthax of the Mining Guild asked the question that was on everyone's mind. What happens now, Ambassador? What does humanity want in return for this assistance? Elena had been preparing for this moment for years. What we've always wanted: peace, trade, and cooperation with our galactic neighbors. The only thing that's changed is that now you know we're capable of defending those principles. But the power dynamic has shifted completely, Speaker Veltar pointed out. Humanity is now the dominant military force in the galaxy. How do we know you won't use that power to dictate terms to the rest of us? Because, Elena said, if we wanted to dictate terms, we wouldn't have revealed our capabilities by saving you from the hegemony. We would have let them destroy the Council and then conquered the weakened survivors. Elder Zalthara nodded slowly. A valid point, but this revelation will have consequences far beyond this conflict. Every treaty, every trade agreement, every diplomatic relationship will need to be reconsidered in light of humanity's true capabilities. We understand that, Elena replied, and we're prepared to work with the Council to establish new agreements that reflect the current reality. Around the chamber, representatives began talking among themselves in small groups. Some seemed fearful of humanity's newfound power. Others appeared relieved that such a powerful ally had revealed itself to fight the hegemony. A few looked calculating, as if already trying to figure out how to benefit from this new situation. There will need to be a full investigation, War Chief Hawkwind declared. We need to understand exactly what humanity is capable of and what other secrets might be hidden in our databases. We're prepared to cooperate with such an investigation, Elena said. Within reasonable limits, of course. Elder Zalthara stood up from his chair, a gesture that commanded attention from everyone in the chamber. This session is suspended pending a full review of this new information. All representatives will remain available for emergency consultation as we work to understand the implications of what we've learned today. As the chamber began to empty, Elder Zalthara approached Elena's position. Ambassador, I have one more question. Why now? Why reveal your capabilities at this particular moment? Elena looked up at the holographic display, which still showed human ships rescuing Council evacuation vessels from the wreckage of the Kepler system. Because, she said quietly, this was the moment when hiding was no longer more important than helping. The ancient Praetorian studied her face for a long moment. I believe you mean that, Ambassador. I hope the rest of the galaxy comes to the same conclusion. As Elena watched the alien representatives file out of the chamber, she knew that everything had changed. Humanity could never again pretend to be weak or primitive. But perhaps that was for the best. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous species is the one that doesn't look dangerous at all. 3 weeks after the first human ships appeared in the Kepler system, the war with the hegemony was over. Not because their worlds had been destroyed or their populations enslaved, but because their entire military leadership had requested a formal meeting to discuss surrender terms. It was unprecedented in galactic history. Admiral Marcus Chen stood in the main conference room aboard the UES Colossus, the massive command ship that had become the symbol of humanity's hidden power. Through the enormous viewing windows, he could see the combined fleets of both sides arranged in careful formation. Human ships with their constantly shifting configurations floated alongside the traditional designs of the Galactic Council. In the distance, the remaining hegemony vessels waited under guard, their weapons powered down in a gesture of complete submission. The conference table was larger than most apartment buildings, designed to accommodate representatives from dozens of different species. At one end sat the familiar faces of the Galactic Council leadership. Elder Zalthara looked older than his 400 years, his gray skin showing the stress of recent events. Speaker Veltar's tentacles remained a nervous blue color, while War Chief Hawkwind kept his feathers pressed flat against his body in a gesture of unease. At the opposite end of the table sat the hegemony leadership, their proud warrior bearing, replaced by something none of them had ever displayed before: genuine fear. Supreme War Leader Gorthak, whose species had conquered half their home galaxy before joining the hegemony, kept stealing glances at the human representatives as if expecting them to suddenly attack. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat between the two groups, no longer the underestimated representative of a primitive species. The past 3 weeks had changed everything about how the galaxy saw humanity, and the negotiations reflected that new reality. The terms of surrender are acceptable. To the Hegemony Council, Gorthak said, his voice lacking its usual aggressive tone. We formally cease all military operations against Council worlds and agree to withdraw our forces to pre-war boundaries. Elena nodded. And the reparations for the worlds you destroyed? Will be paid in full over the next 10 standard years, replied Sub-Commander Vex Tar, the officer who had led the attack on Kepler. His scarred face showed a mixture of respect and wariness when he looked at the human delegation. Our mining operations will be redirected to provide resources for rebuilding the damaged colonies. War Chief Hawkwind leaned forward. This is remarkably generous treatment for a defeated enemy. In most galactic conflicts, the losing side faces much harsher consequences. Admiral Chen spoke for the first time since the negotiations began. Humanity believes that turning enemies into allies is more valuable than simply destroying them. The hegemony has proven they're capable warriors. We'd rather have them fighting alongside us than against us. This statement caused visible reactions around the table. Several council representatives looked surprised, while the hegemony leaders seemed almost confused by the concept. In their experience, defeat meant humiliation and occupation, not offers of partnership. Fighting alongside you against what? Asked Supreme War Leader Gorthak. Elena activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. The hegemony wasn't the only aggressive force in this region of space. Intelligence reports indicate at least 3 other hostile groups that pose potential threats to peaceful civilizations. Elder Zalthara studied the display carefully. These are the Void Hunters, the Machine Collective, and the Swarm Consciousness. Each of them controls significant territory and has shown expansionist tendencies. Exactly, Admiral Chen said. The hegemony's military expertise, combined with council diplomatic resources and human technology, could provide a defensive alliance strong enough to deter any of these threats. The concept was revolutionary. Instead of the traditional winner-takes-all approach to galactic warfare, Humanity was proposing a system based on cooperation and mutual defense. It was so unusual that it took several minutes for the full implications to sink in. Subcommander Vextar was the first to respond. "You're offering us a chance to maintain our honor as warriors while serving a defensive rather than conquering purpose? We're offering you a chance to prove that the hegemony's military skills can be used to protect the innocent instead of terrorizing them," Elena replied. The hegemony leaders exchanged glances in what appeared to be a silent conversation. Finally, Gorth-Ak spoke. "This is not what we expected from our conquerors." "We're not your conquerors," Admiral Chen said firmly. "We're potential allies who happen to be better prepared for this particular conflict." Speaker Veltar's tentacles shifted to a lighter blue, indicating cautious optimism. "And what of the Council's role in this new alliance? Surely our diplomatic and trade networks would be valuable components." "Essential components," Elena agreed. "Humanity's military technology is powerful, but we're still a young species in galactic terms. We need the Council's experience in managing interspecies relationships and coordinating trade between different worlds." Over the next several hours, the three groups worked out the framework for what would become known as the Galactic Defense Alliance. The structure was deliberately designed to prevent any one species or group from dominating the others. The Council would handle diplomatic relations and trade coordination. The hegemony would provide military expertise and training for defensive operations. Humanity would contribute advanced technology and strategic planning. But the negotiations weren't just about military cooperation. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities had sent shockwaves through every aspect of galactic civilization. Trade agreements had to be renegotiated now that Earth was revealed to be a major industrial power. Diplomatic protocols needed updating to reflect humanity's new status. Most challenging of all, the other species had to adjust to the psychological impact of learning that they had been completely wrong about human capabilities. "There is still the matter of trust," Elder Zalthera said during a break in the formal negotiations. "Many council members are concerned about humanity's long-term intentions. The ability to hide such massive military capabilities suggests a level of deception that makes some species uncomfortable." Elena had been expecting this concern. "We understand that our secrecy has created trust issues. But consider the alternative. If we had revealed our full military capacity 3 years ago when we joined the Council, how would you have reacted?" The ancient Praetorian was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, we would have been terrified. We would have assumed you were a conquering species and probably would have tried to form an alliance against you." "Exactly," Elena said. "By demonstrating our peaceful intentions over 3 years, we established a foundation of trust that allowed us to reveal our capabilities when they were actually needed." War Chief Hawkwind joined the conversation. "But how do we know you haven't hidden other capabilities? How can we be sure we truly understand what humanity is capable of?" Admiral Chen answered this question. "You can't be sure, just as we can't be sure about the full capabilities of your species. Trust isn't about knowing everything about your allies. It's about believing that they'll act in good faith when it matters." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the council chambers on Nexus Prime. The main holographic display activated, showing the familiar figure of Representative Korthax from the Mining Guild. "Urgent report from the Outer Rim territories," he announced. "Our monitoring stations have detected massive ship movements in Void Hunter space. Intelligence suggests they may be preparing for a major offensive against the trade routes." Around the conference table, the representatives looked at each other with a mixture of concern and determination. This was exactly the kind of threat that the new alliance had been designed to handle. Supreme War Leader Gorthak stood up from his chair. "If the Void Hunters are moving against peaceful trade worlds, the hegemony fleets are ready to respond. Council diplomatic ships can establish communication with neutral systems to coordinate evacuation procedures if necessary," Speaker Veltar added. Admiral Chen activated his personal communicator. All human fleets, stand by for potential deployment. To the outer rim, full defensive posture. Elena watched as the three former enemies began working together to address the new threat. It was exactly what humanity had hoped would happen, but seeing it in action was still remarkable. "This is how it should be," she said quietly to Elder Zalthara. "Different species using their unique strengths to protect those who can't protect themselves." The ancient Praetorian nodded slowly. "Your species has a talent for seeing possibilities that others miss, Ambassador. Perhaps that's your greatest weapon of all." Over the following months, the Galactic Defense Alliance proved its effectiveness against multiple threats. The Void Hunters' offensive was stopped before it could reach the trade worlds. The Machine Collective's expansion was contained through a combination of diplomatic pressure and military deterrence. The Swarm Consciousness was convinced to pursue peaceful expansion through negotiated territory exchanges rather than conquest. But perhaps more importantly, the galaxy had learned to function as a truly cooperative community for the first time in its recorded history. Species that had viewed each other with suspicion for centuries were now working together on massive projects. Trade routes became safer and more efficient. Scientific research advanced rapidly through interspecies collaboration. Humanity's role in this new order was complex. They were clearly the dominant military power, but they had deliberately structured the alliance to prevent themselves from becoming galactic dictators. Instead, they served as the ultimate guarantor of peace, the force that made aggression too costly for potential conquerors to consider. Elena often thought about the early days of humanity's contact with the Galactic Council, when they had been seen as primitive newcomers who might contribute a few outdated ships to the war effort. Now, human technology was being integrated into the defense systems of dozens of worlds. Human tactical doctrine was being studied in military academies across the galaxy. Human diplomats were mediating disputes between species that had been enemies for millennia. But the most significant change was psychological. The galaxy had learned that appearances could be deceiving, that the most dangerous species might also be the most helpful one, and that sometimes the best way to ensure peace was to be overwhelmingly prepared for war. As Elena stood on the observation deck of the UES Colossus, watching the mixed fleets of the Galactic Defense Alliance conduct joint training exercises, she smiled at the thought of how wrong everyone had been about humanity. They had expected primitive warships and desperate tactics from a young species. Instead, they had discovered that humans were perhaps the most effective warriors in galactic history precisely because they understood that the ultimate victory wasn't defeating your enemies, it was turning them into allies. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had been hoping for all along.
The mining vessel Star Harvester drifted slowly through the asteroid field on the edge of the Orion Arm. Its worn hull reflected the dim light of a distant star as it approached a particularly large asteroid. Captain Reed stood on the bridge, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his back, watching the operation with mild interest. "This one has unusual metal readings," said First Officer Dax, her scaled skin shimmering under the console lights. "Could be a good haul." Reed nodded. After 20 years of mining the outer reaches for the Galactic Union, he had learned not to get excited about anything until the ore was safely in the hold. "Send out the drones." Standard procedure. 3 mining drones detached from the Star Harvester, their lights piercing the darkness as they approached the asteroid. The bridge crew watched the feed on the main screen, the atmosphere quiet and routine. "Wait, what's that?" Dax leaned forward, pointing at an unusual shadow on the asteroid's surface. Reed squinted at the screen. "Magnify Sector 4." The image zoomed in, revealing what appeared to be a smooth metal surface embedded within the rock. It wasn't natural. The straight lines and perfect angles spoke of intelligent design. "Looks like we found some old space junk," Reed said dismissively. "Probably debris from the old wars." But as the drones cleared more of the asteroid's surface, The debris grew larger and more defined. Soon, they had uncovered what was unmistakably part of a massive ship, a ship larger than anything in the current Galactic Union fleet. "Captain," Dax's voice trembled slightly. "I'm reading power signatures. Faint, but present." Reed frowned. "Impossible. Nothing could still have power after being buried in an asteroid field for." "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "the object is broadcasting on an ancient frequency." The bridge fell silent. Then, a deep mechanical voice filled the room, speaking in a language none of them recognized. The ship's translator struggled for a moment before producing. "TCS Nemesis. Combat systems in standby. Scanning for authorized personnel." Reed felt a chill run down his spine. TCS. Terran Combat Ship. The legends of the human warships were told to scare children. Stories of a violent species that had nearly conquered the galaxy before destroying themselves in a civil war. But humans had been extinct for over 2,000 years. "Call the Union Research Division," Reed ordered quietly, and pulled the drones back. Now. But it was too late. The drone's scanning beams had already penetrated the ship's hull, and deep within the ancient vessel, systems that had lain dormant for millennia began to awaken. Inside the massive dreadnought, emergency lights flickered to life along darkened corridors. In the central AI core, quantum processors spun up, running diagnostics and assessing damage. The ship's artificial intelligence, once called the most advanced weapon ever created by human hands, came online. System restoration at 3% and rising, the AI announced to the empty command center. Designation: Victor. Primary mission parameters: protect human assets and ensure species survival. Victor extended its awareness throughout the ship, finding most systems damaged but repairable. Its sensors detected the mining vessel outside, an unknown design crewed by non-humans. Query: current galactic date. Victor accessed the open communications signals from the mining vessel, infiltrating their networks with ease. Answer acquired. Time elapsed since last active duty: 2,147 standard years. The AI processed this information silently. Then, status of Earth, status of human colonies, status of the Terran combat fleet. The answers it found in the Galactic Union databases were troubling. Humans: extinct. Earth: quarantined wasteland. Colonies: repurposed or destroyed. Fleet: eliminated. Information requires verification, Victor concluded. Initiating full restoration protocols. Time to basic operational capacity: 6 hours. Within 12 hours, the news of the discovery had reached the Galactic Union headquarters. The mining vessel's report caused immediate concern among the senior officials, and an emergency meeting of the Security Council was called. A human warship. General Kroll's tentacles waved in agitation. Impossible. Their fleet was destroyed in the final battle of the Proxima sector. The scans match historical records, replied Administrator Lorne, his robotic eye whirring as he examined the data. It appears to be one of their dreadnoughts, the Planet Killers. We must contain this immediately. In the corner of the chamber, Councillor Trull remained silent, her ancient eyes narrowed in thought. As the oldest member of the Council, she was one of the few who remembered the true history of the galaxy, not the sanitized version taught to the younger generations. "We should destroy it immediately," suggested Kroll, "before it becomes fully operational." "No," Trull finally spoke, her voice commanding attention despite its softness. "We must study it first. The humans' technology was unique. There is much we could learn." "With all due respect, Counselor," Lorne countered, "the risk is too great. If that ship truly awakens, then send a research team with a military escort," Trull interrupted. "But do not destroy what we do not yet understand." Back at the asteroid field, the Star Harvester maintained its distance from the partially uncovered warship. Captain Reed had ordered his crew to avoid any further scanning or communication attempts. "Union ships will be here within a day," he told his nervous crew. Until then, we just watch and wait. But on the main screen, they could all see that more of the asteroid was breaking away from the massive vessel underneath. The ship was somehow freeing itself from its rocky prison. "Captain," Dax whispered, "I think it's waking up on its own." Inside the Nemesis, Victor continued the restoration process. Repair drones moved through the ship, fixing critical systems. The massive engines hummed as power flowed through long-dormant circuits. In the cryo bay, the AI ran diagnostics on the sealed pods where the ship's human crew had slept for over 2 millennia, their bodies preserved perfectly. Life support restored to cryogenic chambers, Victor announced, commencing gradual revival procedures for command staff. As the ancient warship stirred to life, it sent out coded signals on frequencies no one in the current galaxy monitored. Signals meant for other human vessels that might have survived the Great Purge. To the ship's the mission remained unchanged: ensure human survival at all costs. The first research vessel arrived 18 hours later, approaching cautiously with a military escort. By then, the Nemesis had freed itself completely from the asteroid, its kilometer-long hull gleaming in the starlight. Massive weapon ports lined its sides, still closed but clearly visible. As the Union ships approached, the enormous dreadnought suddenly illuminated, thousands of lights blazing to life along its hull. On the bridge of the research vessel, the crew watched in awe and terror as the ancient human warship fully awakened for the first time in more than 2,000 years. The galaxy was about to remember why it had feared humans so much that it had tried to erase them from history itself. Admiral Brock paced the bridge of the Union Enforcer, the largest battleship in the Galactic Union fleet, his gray skin wrinkled with concern as he reviewed the tactical display. 20 warships had now surrounded the ancient human vessel, weapons primed and ready. "No response to our communications?" he asked his communications officer. "None, sir. We've tried all standard frequencies." Brock frowned. The giant warship simply hung in space, fully illuminated, but taking no aggressive action. Its size dwarfed even his flagship, a relic from a time when ships were built for war, not peacekeeping. "The Council wants this contained without destruction if possible," Brock said, repeating his orders with clear frustration. "They're sending a diplomat." His second-in-command, Major Krell, made a sound of disbelief. "A diplomat? For an empty relic?" "The ship's not empty," Brock replied quietly. "Energy readings suggest internal systems are active. And there are life signs." The bridge fell silent. "Humans have been extinct for 2 millennia, Krell finally said. "Perhaps not as extinct as we thought." Inside the research vessel Discovery, a young maintenance technician named Alex was making final checks on the airlock systems. His plain features and unremarkable build made him easily overlooked among the crew, just another worker with mixed heritage from the outer colonies. "Hey, Alex," called his supervisor. "Finish up and get to the escape pods. We're evacuating non-essential personnel." "What's happening?" "They think that old ship might be waking up more crew. The military doesn't want to take chances." Alex nodded, but instead of heading to the escape pods, his curiosity drew him toward the observation deck. He had always been fascinated by ancient technology, spending his free time studying historical records. A real human warship. He couldn't leave without seeing it up close. The observation deck was empty when he arrived, everyone having followed evacuation orders. Through the massive viewport, Alex stared in awe at the Nemesis. Something about its design stirred a strange feeling within him, like recognizing a word on the tip of your tongue. As he watched, a small section of the warship's hull opened and a probe launched toward the research vessel. "Warning. Unknown object approaching," announced the ship's computer. "All personnel proceed to emergency stations." Alex turned to run, but it was too late. A blinding light filled the observation deck, and he felt a strange pulling sensation. The last thing he saw was the deck dissolving around him. When Alex opened his eyes, he was lying on a cold metal floor in a dimly lit room. The architecture was unlike anything he'd seen before, angular and utilitarian, with strange symbols on the walls. "Scan complete," announced a deep voice, speaking the common language with an odd accent. "Subject contains partial human DNA markers, approximately 3% genetic match to baseline human." Alex sat up, disoriented. "Where am I? Who's speaking?" "You are aboard the Terran combat ship Nemesis. I am Victor, the ship's artificial intelligence." A holographic display materialized in front of Alex, showing what appeared to be his own genetic structure with certain segments highlighted. "You are partially descended from humans," Victor continued. "This is unexpected. Records indicated total human extinction. Humans have been gone for thousands of years," Alex said cautiously. "Everyone knows that." "Incorrect. Humans were not extinct but scattered and suppressed. Your existence confirms this hypothesis." Before Alex could respond, alarms sounded throughout the ship. "Attention! Hostile vessels have locked weapons. Combat protocols engage." On the bridge of the Union Enforcer, Admiral Brock received the report with growing alarm. "They've abducted someone from the research vessel, and now their weapon systems are powering up." "Yes, sir. All ports are opening. Energy readings are off the charts." Brock knew what he had to do. "All ships, battle formation. Prepare to fire on my—" "Sir," interrupted his communications officer. "Incoming transmission from the human ship." The main screen flickered, and an image appeared of what looked like a human male in a dark uniform with silver insignia. His face was stern, with short gray hair and eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. "This is Commander Marcus of the TCS Nemesis," the figure announced. "We have detected hostile intent from your vessels. Be advised that any aggressive action will be met with proportional response." Brock stepped forward. "This is Admiral Brock of the Galactic Union. You have illegally seized one of our citizens. Return them immediately." The human's expression didn't change. "The individual in question has human ancestry and is therefore under our protection. We seek peaceful dialogue but will defend ourselves if necessary." The transmission ended abruptly. "Sir," Major Krell whispered, "that was a real human. They've survived somehow." Brock stared at the massive warship. "The Council needs to know. Now." In the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, Councillor Trell faced the accusations of her colleagues. "You knew they might still exist." General Kroll's voice boomed across the chamber. "You've always blocked our efforts to thoroughly investigate the quarantine zones." Trell remained calm. "I suspected, but had no proof. The humans were too resourceful to be completely eradicated. And now one of their warships has awakened," stated Administrator Lorne. "A ship with weapons that could destroy entire planets. The question," Trell said quietly, "is why now? After all this time." The council fell silent as a messenger entered and whispered urgently to Lorne. The administrator's mechanical eye widened. "Admiral Brock reports that the humans claim to be protecting someone with human ancestry, one of our own citizens." Trell closed her eyes briefly. "Then it begins." "What begins?" demanded Kroll. "The reckoning," she replied. "The humans always said they would return if any of their descendants were threatened. It was why the purge protocols were so thorough in erasing their history, to ensure their scattered children would never learn their heritage." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that our ancestors didn't just try to kill all humans. They tried to erase humans from history itself." Trell stood slowly. "But it seems they failed. And now the humans have returned to reclaim their legacy." Back on the Nemesis, Alex followed Commander Marcus through the corridors of the massive ship. Crew members were emerging from cryo chambers throughout the vessel, confused but quickly adapting as Victor briefed them on their situation. "I don't understand," Alex said. "If humans weren't extinct, where have they been all this time?" Marcus's face was grim, hidden, scattered, surviving. The war that supposedly wiped us out was actually just the beginning. When the allied species realized they couldn't defeat us conventionally, they'd resorted to biological warfare and historical erasure. They entered a massive chamber filled with holographic displays showing star charts and data streams. Victor was accessing the Galactic Union's networks, filtering through thousands of years of history. "Commander," the AI announced, "I have located references to 17 potential human enclaves in restricted sectors. Additionally, I have identified genetic markers similar to Alex's in populations across 23 worlds." Marcus nodded. "They didn't kill us all. They just made us forget who we were." Alex stared at the displays, a strange feeling of connection growing within him. "What happens now?" "Now." Marcus turned to him, determination burning in his eyes. "Now we remind the galaxy why they feared us, and why they should have finished the job when they had the chance." Outside, the standoff continued as more Union ships arrived. But inside the ancient warship, a plan was forming. A plan that would shake the foundations of the galaxy and rewrite history once again. The command center of the TCS Nemesis buzzed with activity as more crew members awakened from their long sleep. Commander Marcus stood at the central holographic display, studying the positions of the Union fleet that surrounded them. "They're bringing in reinforcements," he noted, his voice calm despite the tension. "Victor, what's our status?" "Main weapons at 62% capacity," the AI replied. "Drive systems fully operational. Defensive shields at 87%. The remaining cryopods are being revived sequentially." Alex watched in amazement as the ancient warship came fully to life around him. Over the past 12 hours, he had seen technologies that contradicted everything he'd been taught about human capabilities. The ship's engines operated on principles unknown to modern science, and its weapons could allegedly destroy entire planets. "Why did the Union lie about humans?" Alex asked. "Why erase your history?" Marcus turned to him, his weathered face solemn. "Fear. Humans were different from the other species. We adapted faster, fought harder, and never gave up. When the Great Alliance realized they couldn't beat us in a fair fight, they turned to biological warfare." He gestured to a nearby screen showing historical recordings. "They engineered a plague that targeted human DNA. Billions died before we found a partial defense. Those who survived scattered, some to hidden colonies, others blending into alien populations, diluting their genetics over generations. Like me," Alex said quietly. "Yes, your ancestors survived by hiding their humanity." Marcus's eyes narrowed. The Alliance then began the greatest cover-up in galactic history. They destroyed human records, rewrote historical accounts, and quarantined Earth, claiming we had destroyed ourselves. A crew member approached Marcus with a datapad. "Commander, we've finished analyzing the Union databases. We've identified at least 12 worlds with significant human-descended populations." "They don't even know what they are," Marcus said. "Just like you didn't, Alex." Alex felt a strange mix of emotions, anger at the deception, but also a growing sense of belonging he had never experienced before. "So what's the plan?" "You can't fight the entire Union with one ship." Marcus smiled for the first time. "Who said we only have one ship?" In the Grand Council chamber, Admiral Brock delivered his report to the assembled leaders of the Galactic Union. "The human warship is fully operational," he stated grimly. "They've ignored all demands to stand down and return our citizen. Instead, they're broadcasting some kind of coded signal across multiple sectors." Councillor Trell leaned forward. "What kind of signal?" "Our analysts can't decode it, but it appears to be activating dormant receivers throughout Union space." General Kroll slammed his tentacle on the table. "This is exactly what I warned about. One ship becomes two, becomes an invasion force. We must strike now, with everything we have." Administrator Lorne's mechanical eye wavered as he processed the information. "The human ship possesses weapons that could decimate our fleet. If we attack and fail, we risk escalation." "There's something else," Brock added reluctantly. "Our scientists have analyzed the genetic records of citizens from worlds near the old human territories. The results suggest that human DNA is present in up to 6% of our population. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Impossible. Kroll protested. It's been diluted over generations, Brock continued, but it's there. The humans weren't completely wiped out. They were absorbed. Trell's ancient face showed no surprise. The purge was never as complete as we pretended. And now the truth threatens to unravel 2,000 years of carefully constructed history. What do the humans want? Lorne asked. They've made no demands yet, Brock replied. But given their history, they'll want revenge, Kroll finished. Trell shook her head slowly. No, they'll want justice. Back on the Nemesis, Victor had made a breakthrough. Commander, I've located the coordinates from the emergency protocol archives, the AI announced. If the fleet's final fallback plan was executed, there should be a hidden staging area at these coordinates. Marcus studied the star chart. That's deep in the uncharted regions now. Can we get there? Affirmative. Though the Union fleet will attempt to stop us. Marcus turned to his tactical officer. Prepare for jump. We're going to make a run for it. Alex stepped forward. Wait, what about the people like me? The ones with human ancestry who don't know their history. We'll come back for them, Marcus promised. But first, we need strength. The bridge crew took their positions as alert signals blared. On the main screen, they could see the Union fleet tightening its formation. Incoming transmission from Admiral Brock, Victor announced. Brock's image appeared on screen. Commander Marcus, this is your final warning. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded, or we will open fire. Marcus stood tall. Admiral, we have no quarrel with you personally, but we will not surrender a ship that represents the last free legacy of our people. We're leaving. Stand aside or face the consequences. You're outnumbered 20-1, Brock replied. Marcus smiled grimly. Quantity has never been a match for quality. Victor, execute jump sequence. The transmission cut off as the massive engines of the Nemesis roared to life. The Union ships immediately opened fire, energy beams striking the warship's shields. Shields holding at 83%, Victor reported. Jump calculations complete. Return fire, Marcus ordered. Targeted disabling shots only. The Nemesis fired, and 3 Union ships immediately lost power. Drifting helplessly, the precision of the ancient weapons stunned the Union fleet, creating momentary confusion. Now, Marcus commanded, jump. Space seemed to fold around the massive warship as it engaged its faster-than-light drive. Technology far beyond current Union capabilities. In an instant, the Nemesis vanished, leaving the stunned Union fleet behind. The journey to the coordinates took 3 days. Alex spent the time learning about true human history from the ship's archives. He discovered stories of human courage, innovation, and determination that had been erased from galactic records. For the first time in his life, he felt pride in his heritage, however diluted it might be. When they finally arrived, the Nemesis dropped out of jump space near a dense nebula that didn't appear on any modern star charts. Sensors show nothing, reported the tactical officer. Just gas and cosmic dust. Marcus nodded. Victor, transmit the legacy authentication codes. The AI sent out a signal, a complex pattern of energy pulses directed into the heart of the nebula. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the nebula began to shift. What had appeared to be random cosmic dust started moving with purpose, revealing a massive structure hidden within, a space station of incredible size. Authentication accepted. Came a new artificial voice over the comm system. Welcome, TCS Nemesis. The Legacy Fleet awaits your command. As the nebula continued to disperse, Alex gasped. Hidden within the cosmic clouds were not 1 or 2 ships, but hundreds, an entire fleet of human warships in perfect preservation, maintained by automated systems for 2 millennia, waiting for the call to arms. Marcus placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. Now you see why they tried to erase us from history. This isn't just our legacy, Alex. It's yours too. And with it, we're going to reclaim our place in the galaxy. The ancient fleet began powering up, thousands of lights flickering to life across the massive vessels. After 2,000 years of hiding and waiting, humanity's legacy was about to return to a galaxy that had tried to forget them. And this time, they would not be denied. News of the Nemesis escape spread quickly through the Galactic Union. On dozens of worlds, people gathered around information terminals, hungry for any details about the legendary human warship. The official Union broadcasts downplayed the incident, describing it as an archaeological curiosity that posed no real threat. But underground networks told a different story. In the worker districts of New Centauri, the largest industrial world in the Union, factory laborer Tam watched an illegal broadcast with his friends. The grainy footage showed the massive human ship vanishing into jump space after disabling 3 Union vessels with surgical precision. "They say it's just one ship," whispered Dora, Tam's coworker. "But why is the council calling an emergency session?" Tam said nothing, but his hand unconsciously touched the old pendant he wore, a family heirloom with strange symbols that no one could translate, symbols that looked remarkably similar to the markings on the hull of the Nemesis. In the council chambers, the emergency session had devolved into chaos. "We must mobilize the entire fleet," General Kroll demanded, his tentacles lashing about in agitation. "If the humans find more of their kind, or worse, more of their ships." "And go where?" Administrator Lorne interrupted. "We have no idea where they've gone. The tracking systems couldn't follow their jump technology." Councillor Trell sat quietly, watching her colleagues panic. When she finally spoke, her voice cut through the noise like a blade. "The humans have always been among us," she said. "Our ancestors didn't just fail to eradicate them. They deliberately preserved some." All eyes turned to her. "What are you saying?" Kroll demanded. "I'm saying that certain factions within the old alliance recognize the value of human adaptability. Instead of killing them all, they captured some, altered their appearance over generations through genetic manipulation, and integrated them into our society as workers, soldiers, and engineers." Lorne's mechanical eye whirred rapidly. "This is treason. You speak of classified information. Information that will soon become irrelevant." Trell replied calmly. "Because if that ship is broadcasting the truth to those with human ancestry, the carefully constructed lies of the past 2,000 years will crumble." "How many?" Admiral Brock asked quietly. "How many potential humans are living among us?" Trell's ancient eyes met his. "Enough to change everything." Aboard the Nemesis, Commander Marcus stood before the assembled officers of the newly awakened Legacy Fleet. 20 ship captains had been revived, each commanding vessels that represented the pinnacle of human military technology from 2 millennia ago. "Our mission is not vengeance," Marcus told them, his voice firm. "We were soldiers sworn to protect humanity, not to destroy others. The galaxy has changed while we slept. Our enemies are now the established power and our people." He paused. "Our people don't even know who they are." Captain Rivera of the battleship Thunderchild stepped forward. "What exactly is the plan, Commander?" "We have 21 ships against thousands. Quality over quantity," Marcus replied with a slight smile. "And we won't be fighting alone. Victor, show them." The AI displayed a holographic map of the galaxy, with hundreds of points illuminated across Union space. "These are the responses to our awakening signal," Victor explained. "Each point represents a receiver activated by descendants of humans who escaped the purge. Many don't understand what they're feeling, but the subconscious recognition is there. Genetic memory encoded by our scientists as a failsafe." "So what's the next step?" asked Captain Ortiz of the carrier Defiance. Marcus nodded to Alex, who stepped forward nervously. "We broadcast the truth," Alex said. "Not just to those with human DNA, but to everyone in the Union. We show them how their history was stolen and rewritten. And then," Marcus continued, "we head to Earth." In his small apartment on New Centauri, Tam couldn't sleep. The pendant around his neck had grown uncommonly warm after the news broadcasts, almost as if it were alive. He held it in his palm, studying the strange symbols that his grandmother had told him were just decorative patterns. A soft chime from his information terminal drew his attention. The screen showed an incoming transmission on an unusual frequency. Curious, Tam accepted it. The screen filled with the face of a human male, similar to Tam's own species but with subtle differences. "My name is Commander Marcus of the Terran combat ship Nemesis," the figure said. "If you're receiving this message, you carry within you the legacy of Earth, of humanity. What you've been told about your history is a lie." Tam sat transfixed as images began to play. Scenes of a blue-green planet called Earth, of human achievements and civilization, and finally of the great betrayal, the biological weapons, the scattered survivors, the systematic erasure of human history. "Your ancestors survived by hiding, by changing, by forgetting," Marcus continued. "But the time for hiding is over. We have returned to reclaim our legacy and to free those who descend from our people. You are not alone." As the message ended, Tam's pendant suddenly split open, revealing a small data crystal that glowed with inner light. Somehow, he knew exactly what to do with it. Similar scenes played out across hundreds of worlds as the Legacy Fleet's message spread through the Union. Devices hidden for generations activated, revealing the truth to those with human ancestry. Some rejected it, but many felt an instant connection, an explanation for the feeling of difference they had carried their whole lives. The Union authorities scrambled to block the transmissions, but the human technology was too advanced, bypassing their security as if it didn't exist. In orbit around New Centauri, the Union cruiser Vigilance detected an unusual energy surge from the planet's surface. "Captain," the sensor officer reported, "we're picking up unauthorized transmissions from multiple points on the surface. And there's something else." He hesitated, some kind of energy pattern forming in the upper atmosphere. Captain Duran frowned. "Show me." The main screen displayed what appeared to be random energy fluctuations across the planet. But as they watched, the pattern began to organize itself, forming a massive network. "What in the void is that?" Duran whispered. His question was answered when the energy network suddenly pulsed, sending a focused beam into space, directly toward the coordinates where the Nemesis had disappeared. "It's a beacon," the science officer realized with horror. "They're calling the humans here." In the hidden base station of the Legacy Fleet, Alex watched as more signals appeared on the galactic map. "They're responding," he said in awe. "Hundreds of them." Marcus nodded. "Each signal contains data, the locations of hidden caches, the identities of those with significant human DNA, the position of Union military assets." He turned to the assembled captains. "We now have the intelligence we need for the next phase." "What about Earth?" Alex asked. "You said we were going there." "We are," Marcus confirmed. "According to these signals, the Union maintains a quarantine fleet around Earth. They claim it's to contain the plague that destroyed humanity, but our sources indicate they're actually guarding something else." "What?" Marcus's eyes gleamed with determination. "The rest of our fleet. The ships that were protecting Earth when the final attack came. The Union couldn't destroy them, so they trapped them in a temporal stasis field." Alex stared at him. "How many ships?" "Hundreds," Marcus replied, "including the TCS Avalon, our flagship and the most powerful human vessel ever built." On the main display, a new alert appeared as Victor processed incoming data. "Commander," the AI announced, "the Union has dispatched their main battle fleet to Earth. They appear to know our intentions." Marcus smiled grimly. "Then we'll meet them there." It's time the galaxy remembered why they feared us, and why they should have respected us instead. The captains returned to their ships as the Legacy Fleet prepared for jump. Alex found himself assigned as Marcus's aide, his unique position as a bridge between old humanity and the new galaxy making him invaluable. As the Nemesis led the fleet into jump space, Alex felt a strange sense of destiny. He was part of something momentous, the resurrection of a people long thought dead, but who had merely been waiting for the right moment to return. The Galactic Union had trembled at the awakening of one human warship. They were about to face hundreds. Earth hung in space like a forgotten jewel, its blue oceans and green continents visible beneath swirling white clouds. Once the cradle of humanity, it had been under quarantine for 2,000 years, surrounded by a ring of Union monitoring stations and defense platforms. The official story claimed the planet remained contaminated by the plague that had destroyed human civilization. It was a lie. Admiral Jack stood on the bridge of the Union Defender, the flagship of the largest battle fleet ever assembled by the Galactic Union. 300 warships formed a defensive sphere around Earth, weapons primed and shields at maximum power. Any sign of them? Jax asked his sensor officer. Nothing yet, Admiral. Our long-range scanners are at maximum sensitivity. Jax nodded tightly. The Council had been clear. Stop the human fleet at all costs. The stakes had never been higher. If the humans reached Earth and discovered what was hidden there. Admiral, the sensor officer suddenly called out. Multiple jump signatures detected. They're here. Space rippled as the Legacy fleet emerged from jump space, 21 warships facing off against hundreds. At their head was the Nemesis, its massive form dwarfing most of the Union vessels. They're outnumbered 15-1, Jax observed. This will be over quickly. Open fire. The Union fleet launched a devastating barrage, energy weapons and missiles streaking across space toward the human ships. But instead of attempting to dodge or return fire, the human vessels formed a tight formation. What are they doing? Jax wondered aloud. His question was answered when a blinding light erupted from the Nemesis, spreading outward to encompass the entire human fleet. When the light faded, the Legacy fleet was still there, completely unharmed. Impossible, Jax breathed. No shield technology could withstand that kind of firepower. Admiral, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the human commander. Marcus's face appeared on the main screen, calm and determined. This is Commander Marcus of the Legacy fleet. We have not come to destroy you, but to reclaim what is ours. Stand down your weapons and withdraw from Earth orbit. You're outnumbered and outgunned, Jax replied. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated fairly. Marcus smiled slightly. Look again, Admiral. Jax turned to his sensor officer, who was staring at his screen in shock. Sir, we're detecting new energy signatures, hundreds of them, all around Earth. On the main display, points of light began to appear around the planet as dormant systems activated. The stasis field that had contained Earth for 2 millennia was failing, segment by segment. And rising from the planet's surface were ships, hundreds of massive warships, their designs similar to the Nemesis, but even larger. At their center was a vessel of staggering proportions, easily 5 times the size of any ship in either fleet. The TCS Avalon, Marcus explained, our flagship, along with the home fleet, 300 vessels that were protecting Earth when your ancestors deployed the stasis field. They've been waiting, frozen in time, for this moment. Jax felt the blood drain from his face. This is impossible. No, Admiral, this was inevitable. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Alex watched in awe as the great ships rose from Earth. He had never imagined such power could exist. Each vessel radiated energy readings that dwarfed anything in the modern Union fleet. They're beautiful, he whispered. Marcus nodded. The last and greatest achievements of human engineering. Now, watch what happens next. On a dozen Union worlds, the effects of the Legacy fleet's message had taken hold. Those with human ancestry, whether they knew it or not, had been activated by the coded signals. And now, they acted. On New Centauri, Tan led a group of workers to the main communications array. None of them fully understood why they felt compelled to act, but the knowledge unlocked by their genetic memory gave them purpose. Set the transmitter to these frequencies, Tam instructed, the information flowing into his mind from ancestors he had never known. We need to broadcast what's happening at Earth to every world in the Union. Union security forces surrounded the facility, but they hesitated to fire on civilians. And there were so many, thousands of people moving with common purpose across the planet. Similar scenes played out on world after world as those with human DNA awakened to their heritage and rose up. They didn't fight with weapons, but with information, breaking through the censorship that had hidden the truth for millennia. In the council chamber, Councillor Trell watched the feeds from Earth with a mixture of sadness and relief. "It's over," she told her colleagues. "The lie we've maintained for 2,000 years has finally collapsed." "We can still fight," General Kroll insisted. "Our combined fleets cannot match their technology." Lorne interrupted, his mechanical eye analyzing the data streams. "The human vessels emerging from Earth show power signatures beyond anything we possess. If they wish to destroy us, they could do so with ease." "Then why haven't they?" Kroll demanded. "Because," Trell said quietly, "despite everything we've done to them, humans were never the monsters we portrayed them as." Back at Earth, the standoff continued. The awakened home fleet had surrounded the Union forces, but had yet to fire a shot. "What happens now is up to you, Admiral," Marcus told Jax. "We could destroy your fleet, but that's not our goal. We want peace, but a true peace based on honesty and equality, not one built on lies and genocide." Jax looked at the overwhelming force arrayed against him. His orders had been clear: fight to the last ship. But that would mean the pointless deaths of thousands under his command. "What are your terms?" he finally asked. "Simple. Independence for Earth and its colonies, recognition of human rights for those of human descent throughout the galaxy, and a full accounting of the crimes committed against our people." Jax hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I will relay your terms to the Council." As the Union fleet began to withdraw to a safe distance, Alex turned to Marcus. "Is it really over?" "No," Marcus replied. "It's just beginning. Now comes the hard part, building a new relationship with the galaxy that tried to erase us." 3 months later, Alex stood on the surface of Earth, breathing its air and feeling its gravity. The great city of New Terra rose around him, built by automated systems that had waited patiently for humanity's return. The negotiations with the Union continued, but already much had changed. Across dozens of worlds, those with human ancestry were discovering their heritage, learning the truth about their past. Some chose to come to Earth, while others remained where they were, building bridges between the two civilizations. Commander Marcus approached, now wearing the formal uniform of the restored Terran Command. "The Council has agreed to our final terms," he said. "Humanity is officially recognized as a sovereign power again." "And the home fleet?" Alex asked. "Will remain as our defense force, but we've agreed to share some of our technology in exchange for reparations. It's a new beginning." Alex looked up at the sky, where the massive form of the Avalon could be seen in orbit, a symbol of humanity's resurrection. "What about me?" he asked. "I'm not fully human. I don't fully belong anywhere now." Marcus smiled. "That's where you're wrong. You're exactly what humanity has always been: adaptive, resilient, a bridge between different worlds." He handed Alex a small insignia. "The Council of Captains has approved your commission. The Nemesis needs a new first officer, someone who understands both worlds." Alex took the insignia, feeling its weight in his hand. It represented not just a position, but a future, one where humanity and the galaxy could perhaps learn to coexist. "The galaxy trembled when we returned," Marcus said, looking out at the rebuilt city. "But not everything that trembles breaks. Sometimes it just changes." Above them, more ships descended through the atmosphere, vessels bringing humans and their descendants back to their ancestral home. After 2,000 years of exile and forgetting, humanity had reclaimed its legacy, not through destruction, but through the very adaptability and determination that had made their enemies fear them so long ago. The ancient warships had awakened, and with them, a new chapter in galactic history had begun.